Hello everyone and welcome. Today we are going to talk about something very important in English, the simple present tense. This is one of the first tenses you will learn, and it is also one of the most common. We use it all the time in our daily conversations. The simple present tense helps us talk about things that are generally true or happen regularly. It's a foundational block for building your English skills. So understanding it well will make a big difference in your fluency and confidence as you continue to learn and practice speaking. So, what does it mean? Think of it as the now tense, but not for things happening at this exact second. Instead, it describes actions or states that are always true, or that happen again and again. For example, when you say, "I drink coffee every morning," you are using the simple present tense. You are not necessarily drinking coffee right this moment, but it is a regular part of your daily routine. This tense helps us share our habits, our schedules, and universal truths about the world around us. It's a simple but powerful tool for communication. Learning the simple present is your first big step towards sounding more natural when you speak English. Many beginners find it a little tricky, especially with the S at the end of some verbs. But don't worry, we will break it down together, step by step. The rules are quite straightforward once you see them clearly. The key is to practice them often so they become automatic. Soon, you will be using the simple present tense without even thinking about it, just like a native speaker. Let's get started on our journey to master this essential tense. In the next sections, we will look at how to form positive and negative sentences, how to ask questions, and exactly when you should use the simple present tense in your conversations. Remember to relax, take your time, and enjoy the process of learning. The goal is to feel comfortable and confident. By the end of this guide, you will have all the information you need to use the simple present tense correctly and effectively every single day. First, let's look at how to make positive sentences, also called affirmative sentences. The structure is very simple. For the pronouns I, you, we, and they, you just use the base form of the verb. For example, you can say, "I walk to the park," or "They play soccer on weekends." Notice that the verb walk and play do not change at all. It's the most basic form of the verb, which makes it easy to remember for these subjects. This straightforward rule applies to most verbs you will use in everyday English conversations. Now, things change just a little bit for the third-person singular pronouns, he, she, and it. When you use these subjects, you need to add an S or es to the end of the base verb. For instance, you would say, "He walks to the park," or "She plays soccer." See that little S? It's a very important detail. For verbs that end in O, sh, ss, x, or z, you add S. For example, "He goes to school," or "She watches movies." This small change is a common point of confusion, so pay close attention to it. Next, let's talk about making negative sentences. To say no in the simple present, we need a little help from the auxiliary verbs do and does. We combine them with the word not. For the subjects I, you, we, and they, we use do not, which we often shorten to don't in spoken English. For example, "I do not like spiders," or more commonly, "I don't like spiders." Another example is, "We don't live in the city." This is the standard way to negate a statement for these pronouns. For the third-person singular subjects, he, she, it, we use does not, which we usually contract to doesn't. For example, "He does not work on Sundays," or "He doesn't work on Sundays." Here is a very important tip. When you use does not or doesn't, the main verb goes back to its base form. You remove the s or es. So you say, "She doesn't play the piano," not "She doesn't plays the piano." The auxiliary verb does already carries the third-person signal, so the main verb doesn't need to. Now that we know how to make positive and negative statements, let's learn how to ask questions. Asking questions is a huge part of any conversation, and in the simple present, it's quite easy. Just like with negative sentences, we need our helper verbs, do and does. To form a simple yes-no question, you start the sentence with do or does, followed by the subject, and then the base form of the verb. The structure is do, does plus subject plus base verb. It's a simple formula you can use every time. For the subjects I, you, we, and they, we begin the question with do. For example, if the statement is "You speak English," the question becomes "Do you speak English?" Another example is "They live here." The question would be "Do they live here?" Notice how the main verb stays in its simple base form. You are simply placing do at the very beginning of the sentence to transform it into a question that someone can answer with a yes or a no. This pattern is very consistent and reliable for our third-person singular subjects, he, she, and it. We start the question with does. For instance, the statement he likes pizza becomes the question, does he like pizza? Remember our important rule from negative sentences. It applies here too. When you use does, the main verb returns to its base form. You drop the S. So you ask, does she work downtown? Not, does she works downtown? The word does all the heavy lifting for the third person. You can also ask more detailed questions using question words like who, what, where, when, why, and how. These are called which questions. You simply place the question word at the beginning before do or does. For example, where do you live? Or what does she study? The structure is word plus do does plus subject plus base verb. This allows you to gather specific information beyond a simple yes or no, making your conversations much richer and more detailed. Practice forming both types of questions to become a great conversationalist. Understanding how to form the simple present is one thing, but knowing when to use it is just as crucial. One of the most common uses is to talk about habits or routines, things you do regularly. For example, I brush my teeth twice a day, or she checks her email every morning. These are actions that are repeated over time. You can often find time expressions like always, usually, often, sometimes, never, every day, or on Fridays in these sentences, which are great clues that you need the simple present tense. Another key use for the simple present is to state facts or general truths. These are things that are always true, or that we consider to be permanent. For instance, the Earth revolves around the sun. This is a scientific fact. Another example is, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. You can also use it for more personal facts, like he is from Spain or I am a teacher. These statements describe a reality that doesn't change from moment to moment, making the simple present the perfect tense to express them clearly. We also use the simple present tense to talk about schedules, timetables, and fixed plans, especially for future events. This might seem a little strange using a present tense for the future, but it's very common for scheduled events. For example, the train leaves at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, or our flight departs in 2 hours. You will also see this in sentences like, the movie starts at 7:30 in the evening, or the store opens at 9 o'clock. It shows that the event is part of a fixed, official schedule. Finally, the simple present is used to give instructions, directions, or to describe steps in a process, like in a recipe. Imagine you are telling someone how to make tea. You would say, first, you boil some water. Then, you pour it into a cup. Next, you add a tea bag. These are step-by-step commands. You also use it for giving directions. You go straight down this street, and then you turn left at the bank. A helpful tip to remember is this. If it's a routine, a fact, a schedule, or a step-by-step guide, the simple present is almost always your best choice. Keep practicing, and it will soon become second nature.